What do castles and networks have in common? Both can be breached if you ignore the cracks. In cybersecurity, those cracks are called vulnerabilities, and they're exactly what hackers exploit to sneak in and wreak havoc. Vulnerability management is how patching those cracks can save your organization from disaster. This is Intellectual Point. We get you a high-paying job in tech. Here's the deal. Cybercriminals are like opportunistic burglars, always looking for an open window. If you don't lock it, aka patch vulnerabilities, they're in. That's why organizations need continuous vulnerability assessments to stay ahead. Take the Equifax breach of 2017, one of the most infamous cyber disasters. Hackers exploited an unpatched Apache Struts vulnerability, exposing sensitive data of 147 million people. That's names, social security numbers, birth dates, the works. The kicker, a patch for that vulnerability had been available for months. Equifax just didn't apply it in time. The result? A $575 million settlement and irreparable damage to their reputation. Credit score of 0 out of 850, if you ask me. So who fights these battles? Vulnerability analysts scan systems for weaknesses. IT administrators apply patches faster than you can say update available. And penetration testers play the role of ethical burglars, finding vulnerabilities before the bad guys do. For more, I'll hand things off to Intellectual Point instructor Richard Parker.
So here we're going to begin to explore vulnerability management and the reporting aspect of that. So vulnerability reporting kind of makes sure that the organization is aware of any risk that we have. We run vulnerability scans, we get back the report, we evaluate the report, we validate, whether something is actually positive or false positive. And then we provide information about the appropriate steps to mitigate whatever the vulnerability is. There are two main types of reports. There's the simple summary, like, here's a problem, dude, here's the problem with it. Okay, here's what's wrong. So it's a simple summary of the existing vulnerabilities we have. The second type of report is a very detailed report that not only outlines these vulnerabilities, but also outlines specific things we can do to mitigate that particular vulnerability. So we have some options probably, right? And we're going to look at some of the benefits when it comes to this reporting. Well, you have increased awareness because that's going to help identify potential weaknesses in my system, software, and network. Because we're scanning and we're doing vulnerability management, so we know what's happening. And this is typically a policy decision. How often do we do it? Could be once a quarter, could be every month. Could be continuous. If we're running like Nessus for a network environment scanner, it's going to be running real time all the time, okay? It can improve our response. So it allows us to quickly see, then mitigate whatever these vulnerabilities are. We see them, we can identify new ones, things that are critical. It helps us to improve our security posture, i.e., our position, how strong are we? So it will provide us metrics as well as different measurements to see how effective we're being with our strategy. It is most definitely about complying or having better compliance with whatever regulatory body we are subject to, as well as laws and data privacy legislation like GDPR and any other security standards that we currently have in place. Now, there are some different types of vulnerability management report. We can have from our vulnerability scanner, we have the dashboard, right? The main console that we're looking at the report that's kicked out. A lot of times those reports will be kicked out in HTML format where, we can view it in a browser. So it can give us a summary report, and then we can also generate a detailed vulnerability report. And these things are highly customizable. And again, I can configure that dashboard to show me the things that I need to see for my environment. Okay, so they are highly customizable. So the vulnerability report itself, okay, what is the content? So there's an output of the vulnerability scanning platforms, the things it scanned. It looks at different hosts or individuals. You may hear them called a node. A node is anything we plug into the network. But it's going to look at your operating systems. Are there any vulnerabilities within that? are we running a virtual environment where we have virtual desktop and virtual servers and those things? So it's going to look at any vulnerabilities that may be within that hypervisor. It could be VMware's ESXi. It could be Microsoft's Hyper-V. It could be Citrix version, or if we're running in Amazon AWS, they have their version of hypervisor, et cetera, et cetera. So does Microsoft, right? Hyper-V. As well as databases. So it looks at your databases themselves and are they vulnerable? Now, that report. So with host vulnerabilities, it's going to look at your desktop applications. It's also going to look at things like mobile devices. Do we have laptops, tablets, phones deployed, things like that? Any web platforms. So if we have any type of website, it's going to, we can use a web scanner and look at that as well. Network devices like routers and switches and firewalls and load balancers and those type of things, and all kinds of other peripherals that we may plug in and put in there, like printers, right? Nobody thinks about printers, but printers are there and they can have vulnerabilities. Other things as well, like the compliance manager report that's based on the audit findings. There are also third-party assessments where, we may see, like through the NIST database, right? We get more information back. There can be physical security risks. In other words, can somebody just walk into the building unabated, gain access to a device, and plug something into that device? So other things as well, we look at like manual evaluation of the endpoints and evaluating each one of those based on, our findings, and is that particular device vulnerable? Is it not? So now the formats, or i.e. the report itself, okay? So it can be generated in just plain text. That can be helpful if you're using direct, terminal or command line tools. It can be easy to search. Very commonly, it may be kicked out in either XML or a CSV format. Can definitely generate HTML format that anybody can, pull it up. If they have access to the report, they can pull it up through a browser, or we could just create a PDF and, disseminate that report as a PDF. Now, when we think about best practices, we want to use the most appropriate tools. So we want to identify first what needs to be reported. Select the best tool that's suited for the type of report I'm trying to generate. They're not all the same. There are different types of scanners, whether it's network environment scanner for on-prem, whether it's cloud scanner, whether it's a web scanner, and those type of things. So we want consistency. And to do that, we're going to develop policies and our steps or procedures that we're going to follow, and then generate these reports on a regular schedule so that we know what's happening in our environment. So the report content, we will have details that regard the type of vulnerability. What is this, right? How many particular devices have this problem, or the number of instances that are affected? How many systems are affected? What's the actual level of risk? And what are the recommendations about how to mitigate or fix the problem? The mitigations, we want to look at and identify any patches we have available. If not, then we need to figure out a workaround, okay? Is that going to be permanent, or is it just something that we're doing momentarily until there's a legitimate official patch? If there's not going to be one, maybe it is a legacy system that we have some specific custom written software. We can't change it. It is what it is. And so we're just going to have to figure out some type of a workaround to prevent that vulnerability. So it could be temporary, or it could be permanent.
Think you've got what it takes to protect networks from these digital heists? If solving problems and locking down systems excites you, vulnerability management is your calling. Learn how to master this critical skill in Intellectual Point's CYSA Plus course, because no one wants to be the next Equifax headline. Thanks for watching, and I'd really appreciate it if you hit that like button and subscribe to help the algorithm help more people get life-changing careers in tech.